Hello guys, welcome to my first Caitlyn guide. I am a challenger Caitlyn OTP from US server and I'm making this guide to show my unique take on this champion. First thing I want to show in this guide is EW combo. I have still yet to see any pro players using this combo, and that most people who pick up Caitlyn just play her in a very bland way. Don't get me wrong, EQ is not a bad combo, but it should be used way less often. EW is better because it allows you to move freely after the E and sets you up for a stronger combo. Obviously it's not easier to land than EQ, but if you practice this combo enough, it will feel absolutely worth it in most scenarios. This combo is one of the biggest reasons why I love this champion so much, and it feels like the skill ceiling is very high. EW combo forces you to think about where exactly the enemy will move after your net, and gives you an insanely good compensation when you get it right. Now, traps. Please don't just make a fake wall of traps, it is really a waste of your ability. You can do a wall of traps, but don't use all 5 at once, and place them in a way that forces the enemy into a little choke point, instead of creating multiple different choke points for the enemy to pass through. In general, before fights happen, you want to place traps on bush entrances, or in spots where they will engage onto you, or even next to walls where their pathing will force them to walk into the trap. You should place a trap whenever your W is on maximum stacks, so you don't waste the cooldown of W ticking down. It has a very little mana cost, so it shouldn't make you run out of mana. What I don't want to see is Caitlyn with 5 stacks on W and not using it until an objective spawns, and placing 5 of them instantly to create a fake wall. If you actually place them one by one before the objective spawns, you can actually have a wall of traps prepared and still have 4 or 5 traps ready for the team fight. As you have plenty of traps, in fights you generally want to auto W auto, because with the low attack speed this combo doesn't lose you any DPS. Use EW whenever you are in danger and place the trap where you think the enemy is going. In any case, if you want to play it safe, place a trap between you and the enemy so it forces them to disengage from you, or they have to take a path around the trap. Placing traps like this increases your DPS massively against beefy opponents, as you get trap headshots against them. Before talking about builds, let's look at how Caitlyn scales with items. Without crit chance, headshots have 60 to 120% AD ratio. This is quite a big jump, and this means Caitlyn spikes when she gets level 7 and level 13. Headshot also scales very generously with crit chance. 182.75% additional AD ratio is no joke. It gives a lot of damage on that headshot. Q has a decent base damage, but also scales very well with AD, with 205% AD ratio. W damage scaling is meh with 40% bonus AD, but base damage is decently high at 220. Ult has a quite strong base damage and a 150% bonus AD ratio that gets amplified by crit chance up to 50%. This means you get 1050 base damage with 225% bonus AD ratio at 100% crit. Based on this analysis, for maximizing damage you want to build AD and crit chance, with armor penetration also being very good to amplify your physical damage. Attack speed has some value for getting headshots more often with auto attacks, but in my opinion you can reliably get headshots by preparing them for fights or hitting a net or trap on the enemy. Before getting into items, I want to talk about runes. Most of the time I take Halo Blaze because Caitlyn has one of the highest attack ranges of the ADC roster, and with higher range and higher attack speed, you can space the enemy ADC in trades very well. Also, due to the nature of Caitlyn's gameplay, which is focused more on burst fights, it does very well on most scenarios. This rune allows you to have a guaranteed headshot for pretty much any fight, as long as you have the passive stack count at 3 or more. And if you clear waves thinking about trying to stay on a good stack count, you should have a headshot almost ready all the time. Minor runes all go to maximize damage, AD and gold. Sudden Impact is quite a strong minor rune, and if you go for E at level 1, it gives you a very strong trade. You might ask, why don't I go Fleet or Little Tempo like everybody else? And I would say, well, what's good about them? Fleet gives almost 0 sustain and gives some movement speed. This rune would make sense for a champion that struggles to stick to enemies or kite them back, but Caitlyn really does not need this, and Fleet just gives you an overall weaker laning phase. Little Tempo just does not make sense for Caitlyn. If you look at other champions like Ashe, Kalista, Varus and many others, you will see that Caitlyn will just never win an all-in fight against them, if the fight lasts more than a few seconds. And since Caitlyn has the tools to just disengage from a fight with EW, you can just choose to not fight an all-in. So why use the rune that forces bad fights for you? I also want to mention that Precision 3 minor runes are much worse than what you can get in Domination, Sorcery and Inspiration. First Strike is also another rune that I sometimes take for lanes that are very passive, so that you can farm more gold with it and scale faster. If you struggle to get an auto to proc First Strike off cooldown, try to go for Qs from the brush, as they are much harder to dodge and easier to hit. Now for items. This might get outdated eventually, but right now the build is Collector, Lord Doms, Infinity Edge, and then any situational item, most of the times being either Bloodthirster or Shieldbow. What is important in this build is to get to that 3 item power spike, as it usually comes with level 13 that increases your headshot damage as well. Lord Doms is a stronger item compared to IE, but the LDR components are pretty bad after you upgrade the longswords. So what I do is buy whatever components from IE and LDR that make me the strongest at that point of the game, and upgrade to full item whenever it's possible, because full items are always stronger than components. I also want to point out that I'm not a fan of rapid fire cannon, because generally you're gonna have to hit frontline first, and RFC is quite a weak item even in DPS terms versus tanks and fighters, so it wastes you a possible AD plus crit item that would increase your damage by quite a bit. RFC is mostly just a shiz item that gets value if you can catch the enemy ADC or mage off guard with your long range headshot on a mid wave. But if they know you have the extra range and they just don't walk up to you, RFC loses all its value. I would only buy RFC if the enemy composition has no frontline and you struggle to hit anyone. For boots, I usually stick with tier 1 boots, and I only upgrade them after 3 item power spike or when you struggle to play the game with low movement speed, for example against long range poke. Boot choices is between Swifties and Berserkers. Swifties is the default for more movement speed, and Berserkers is usually good against tanks and durable fighters. For summer spells, I take Ghosts and Flash almost every game. Ghost allows me to play more aggressively on lane, for example hitting plates and ghosting off a jungle gank, and also covers the weakness of a lack of movement speed in fights from having tier 1 boots. As I said before, you don't want to contest other ADCs in all-ins, as they are much more powerful in extended fights and you can choose to not fight them, so taking barrier or heal doesn't make much sense. That's it for my Caitlyn guide. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like and share it so that this video can get to more people. My channel also has plenty of VODs of Caitlyn gameplay for you to watch, so don't miss out on them by subscribing to my channel.